In 1972, a psychologist named Walter Mischel sat a 4-year-old child down at a table. On the table was a single marshmallow. The child stared at it. Mischel made an offer. You can eat this marshmallow now, or you can wait 15 minutes. And if you wait, you get 2. Then he left the room. What happened next was recorded on camera. Some children ate the marshmallow immediately. Some waited 30 seconds. Some made it to 2 minutes. A small number sat in that chair for the full 15 minutes and got the second marshmallow. Mischel thought he was running a simple experiment on decision-making. He had no idea he had just built one of the most controversial studies in the history of psychology. The children who waited did extraordinary things to resist. They covered their eyes so they couldn't see the marshmallow. They turned their chairs around so their backs were to the table. They sang to themselves. They kicked the desk. They sat on their hands. One child spent 14 minutes smelling the marshmallow, picking it up, putting it back down, getting as close as possible without eating it, and somehow held on. These were 4-year-olds running strategies that behavioral researchers wouldn't formally document for another decade, intuitively understanding that the way to resist temptation was not to fight it directly, but to remove it from attention entirely, which is the same conclusion cognitive behavioral therapy arrived at 50 years later. Mischel followed the children for years, then decades. What he found should not have been possible. The children who had waited the longest in the original experiment went on to have significantly higher SAT scores, better physical health, lower rates of substance abuse, lower divorce rates, higher income. A single 15-minute test, administered at age 4, appeared to predict the trajectory of an entire life. The research community did not know what to do with this. A marshmallow at age 4 predicted everything. The findings spread far beyond academia. It appeared in newspapers, in parenting books, in TED Talks viewed tens of millions of times. The message was simple. Self-control determines your future, and you can see it in a 4-year-old with a marshmallow. The world ran with this conclusion. Parents started training their children in delayed gratification. Schools built programs around teaching self-control. It felt true. It matched what people believed about discipline, about character, about the difference between people who succeed and people who don't. It confirmed something we desperately wanted to believe, that the future is predictable, that character is visible early, that a child who waits for a second marshmallow at age 4 is already on the right path. And then in 2018, a team of researchers looked at the data again. Tyler Watts at New York University decided to replicate the study. He used a much larger sample. Mischel's original study had used approximately 90 children, all from the same preschool. At Stanford University, children of faculty and staff at one of the most elite academic institutions in the world. Watts used over 900 children from a nationally representative sample, different backgrounds, different income levels, different family structures. He ran the same test, the same marshmallow, the same 15 minutes, and when the data came back, the effect had almost entirely disappeared. Once you controlled for the child's background, family income, mother's education level, home environment, the predictive power of the marshmallow test collapsed. The children from wealthier backgrounds wait longer and went on to do better. But the waiting and the doing better were both products of the same thing. The background, not the willpower. The child from a stable home could afford to wait. They had been taught through thousands of daily interactions that waiting was safe, that the adult would return, that the promise would be kept, that the second marshmallow would actually arrive. The child from an unstable background had learned something different. Take what is in front of you, because promises don't always hold, because the second marshmallow might never come. This was not a failure of self-control. This was a rational, evidence-based decision made by a 4-year-old based on their actual lived experience of how reliable the world was. The child who ate the marshmallow immediately was not demonstrating poor impulse control. They were demonstrating accurate calibration to their environment. In a world where promises are kept, waiting is rational. In a world where promises are broken, taking what is in front of you is rational. The test was not measuring self-control, it was measuring trust. Whether the child had been given enough consistent, reliable experiences to believe that waiting would be rewarded. The marshmallow test was not a test of character, it was a test of childhood. To understand what was actually being measured, you have to go back much further than 1972. Your ancestors did not have the option of delayed gratification, not the way we frame it today. When you found food on the savannah, you ate it. Not because you lacked self-control, because the food might be gone in an hour. Another animal might take it. The group might need to move. The brain that ate immediately was the brain that survived. The brain that waited for a better option was the brain that sometimes went hungry. Your default setting is not delayed gratification. Your default setting is take what is available now. Because for almost all of human history, that was the correct strategy. But here's what survived every replication, every challenge, every critique, the strategies the children used to resist the marshmallow were more predictive than whether they resisted it at all. The children who covered their eyes, who turned their chairs around, who transformed the marshmallow in their minds from a food item into a cloud, into a cotton ball, into something inedible. These children were demonstrating a specific cognitive skill, the ability to reframe to mentally transform, the nature of a temptation, not through willpower, through imagination. A 4-year-old sitting on their hands pretending the marshmallow was a cloud was doing something that clinical psychologists would spend decades formalizing into therapeutic frameworks. The children who succeeded were not stronger. They were more creative. The marshmallow is still sitting on the table. It has been sitting there for 50 years, and we are still arguing about what it means. The science does not give us a clean answer. What it gives us is a more accurate picture of how complicated the answer actually is. The children who ate the marshmallow were not broken. They were accurate. They had read their environment correctly. They had concluded, based on evidence available to them, that the promise might not hold, that the adult might not return, that the second marshmallow might never arrive. And in many cases, they were right. The world they came from did not always keep its promises. They were not failing. A test of character, they were passing. A test of reality. And the test that was supposed to predict who they would become was really only ever showing us who they had already been, and what the world had already taught them to expect.